Hard Hat's all about showing up to play hard, doing what it takes to win.
If you want to cement legacy, win another.
He's your third center.
You don't want to pump him up too much, but it's hard not to.
This is maybe the most I've ever agreed with you.
Hey, Bobby Manning here, and welcome to a Monday edition of the Garden Report. Back here with another week of Celtics coverage, training camp. Just a little more than a week left of it. One preseason game left for the Celtics, and they're now 2-1 after rolling over the Cavs, who I was looking forward to seeing, and I didn't get to see because no one played again against the Celtics here in another preseason. Is this new, Justin? I feel like in past years, teams haven't sat guys as aggressively as they have this summer, this fall. I don't remember quite as many rest days in a preseason as at least I've seen.
Yeah, I think it's tough because I haven't watched a lot of preseason outside of the Cavs. I'm kind of easing my way back into the NBA season, and Cleveland played Chicago twice. Chicago was kind of playing their guys. I think the Cavs basically did the same approach last year, where first two games, everyone's kind of playing. The starters are getting some good burn. Third game, give them a little bit of a break. Kind of let some of those deeper guys go, and then a bit of a dress rehearsal for the final game. But the Cavs, I think they're now 0-8 in the Kenny Atkinson era in preseason. So
no way.
A very funny trend that is just kind of continued.
Yeah, so I think he'll want the guys being out as an excuse for that. But we'll get to the Cavs in a little bit. I'm actually a little lower on them going into this year, and we can get into why. But I want to hear your thoughts on the Celtics first as we start this year, because there's so many opinions about them, and on both sides. I feel like some fans think they're going to tank. Some fans think they'll be better than expected. And the outside view, surprisingly enough to me, despite the losses here, despite everything that went on this summer with them, is that they're going to be fine. And even me, who's going into this year, I'd say relatively optimistic, I've been surprised by just how much the sentiment outside of Boston is. They're going to be fine. They got Jalen, they got Derek White, they got all that fabric from winning, Joe Mazzulla, all the rest there. Because when you actually look at this roster, there are a lot of holes, a lot of questions.
Yeah, but at the same time, have you looked at the Eastern Conference, right? Like that's
always the argument.
It's a bit of a down year for the East in general, and a big part of that is obviously Jayson Tatum, likely being out for at least a large portion of the season. We'll see how he approaches things there. Tyrese Halliburton and, Miles Turner leaving Indiana. Milwaukee, like you look at that, and Milwaukee's, I think, kind of almost consensus fourth best team in the conference. And if you take a look at that roster and you put your thumb over Giannis, how do you feel about that roster? So when you look at the Boston Celtics, they're a well-coached team. They have depth up and down the lineup. Obviously a little thin when it comes to the big man rotation, but I think this is a team that's going to be in the postseason. Like that might be, a 7 or 8 seed, depending on what happens in the play-in or whatever the case may be. But there's probably a realistic chance that this is maybe even a first round matchup for the Cavs. And, I just think there's not enough established teams in the Eastern Conference that are looking to take that next step, right? Because I think the teams that missed the playoffs last year in the East, a lot of them do have talented rosters, but with the exception, or at least talented aspects of their roster, a few good players. But with the exception of Toronto, I don't really see one that has enough talent to take a noteworthy step forward where they can even contend for a 500 season. So I just don't think there's enough teams looking to push Boston down after, the natural fall down the standings that'll happen given the changes in the roster.
Yeah, Philly's the big one, and that's who the Celtics are going to play on opening night 3 times actually over the first month. So is Embiid ready? Is George ready for that? That's going to be the question. I
forgot about them. That's an oversight, but they kind of have earned that oversight status if we're keeping.
They have, yeah. And I, when I did my rankings, I haven't updated them in probably about a month now, but I just put them in at 10 because they could be on the bottom of the rankings in the East again if everybody's hurt, or they could be up at the top if everything goes right. So I'm just going to put them somewhere in the middle there aside for the moment because it's just so hard to predict what's going to happen there. But there's like 5 teams in the middle of the East like that. You mentioned Milwaukee. Indiana is almost squarely where Boston is when you look at the losses and injury there.
I
I'd
wouldn't
throw
even say
Miami.
that. Like Boston's got with Jaylen Brown, they got a better best player than Indiana.
Interesting. I feel the opposite actually because Nemhard's taken over in the East Finals for Halliburton and did fairly well even though they didn't win those games. And
You think Pascal
Siakam's
Siakam's a better player than Jaylen Brown?
no, but he's been in that frontline position leading a team before for
Yeah, but the last time we
season.
saw it was quite a few years ago, and they were missing the playoffs at that rate, so they traded him to Indiana. Like I just don't think there's a lot of guys that are going to make life easier for everybody else. Like Nemhard, it's going to be an interesting balance because he's
they just
better.
lost McConnell too, and that's a killer.
Right. So I just think that there's a little bit more like basketball IQ and institutional knowledge when it comes to the Celtics.
Well, let me ask you this:
that continuity there.
Because this is a big question going into this year too, and I did want to talk about it here because I think everybody's curious to hear my opinion about what happened last night after the Celtics-Cavs game, which was, of course, Joe's latest bizarre press conference. I don't know if you caught it, Justin,
I did.
He got asked about the rebounding because they gave up 21 offensive rebounds to Cleveland last night, and he just kept repeating, get 5 guys on the floor who will rebound. What can you do better? Get 5 guys out there who will rebound. Whoever's rebounding, I'm putting them out there, that sort of thing. And then you got a 3-point question that Eric Tim, and it was just Joe in rare form there. So I'll ask you this because I'm interested to see this year too. And I actually think he's in a good position. Joe's had talented rosters the length of his NBA coaching career here. And I think people have almost looked at it like he's succeeded because of those rosters he's been handed. This is his chance to actually show his imprint on making the most of a roster that doesn't have as much talent here. And that, of course, has been Rick Carlisle's MO, at least in Indiana, is making the most of whether through injuries or, mixed array of talent there, the best of a team that went to the NBA Finals a year ago against all odds. So that's why I feel a little bit better about Indiana than probably the average person does, because I think Carlisle's made the most of things there.
Yeah.
Joe, I have confidence in, but we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I'm certainly one of those that has wondered that. Like, I'm not going to sit here and disrespect a coach that's won an NBA championship, but I didn't love how you guys played last year. Like, I thought you kind of leaned into the, we looked at the strengths from the year prior when we won, and we just kind of cranked that up a little bit. I thought there was just a little bit too much isolation basketball. I thought the 3-point attempt rate, particularly early in the season, just kind of got to like that comical level where before it at least felt like there was a little bit more balance, and it was just so easy to kind of bait the team into that isolation basketball. Cavs obviously did a lot of that, basically just using Darius Garland as the point of attack defender they used them that way all season, but against Boston in particular, they knew, all right, we're going to put Garland at the point of attack. They're going to switch Tatum onto him every single play, and Tatum's going to settle for a mid-range jumper. And, Garland, I think Garland defended more Tatum shots than any player in the NBA last season.
They spammed the mismatches last year. It was unbelievable.
And he shot under 30% on those shots, right? Like, and I don't think that's necessarily anything. Doesn't have a lot to do with Garland. I think Darius does a good job of staying in front and at least not allowing like the driving lane to the basket. But I just thought that the year prior, they did a better job creating quality shots for guys within, still doing a lot of that same stuff. So I'm interested to see that with Mazzulla, but I don't think, even if you want to give the nod to Rick Carlisle between the two, I just think that the talent gap is a little bit too large to favor them over Boston. I think Boston's going to have a better year.
So what do you like about Boston's roster when you look at it, if it is the talent that you think is going to prevail there? Obviously, Jaylen, you would think, would be able to step up into Jayson Tatum's shoes to some degree there.
Yeah.
Derek goes a little underrated in that conversation too. And then I'm like super excited about what Pritchard could potentially do this year. After that is where the questions begin, particularly at center, because
The big man depth
Indiana,
is scary. The big man
yeah,
depth is scary, but Indiana, you're talking about Jay Huff and
right.
two
Well, I was
big
gonna
men
say
coming.
Indiana might be the only team that compares to them in terms of the big man depth.
Right, and two other bigs that are coming off torn Achilles. Like they're not going to have the same pop next year, even if they play. So, it's all of that, right? Like Pritchard, I think is able to step up and take a larger role. I think Derek White's a really intelligent, really impactful player. Jaylen
You've loved
Brown is
White for a while.
yeah, Jaylen Brown's the best player out of either team, and I think he absolutely has a path to having an All NBA season, and maybe even a first team All NBA season, given the load he's going to have to carry, and then scoring off the bench and Simons. Like I think that he can bring a nice punch and give them some shot making, even if things are stagnant. So yeah, I have a lot of questions from a big man perspective, and I think that's the type of thing that would show up in a matchup against the actual Cavs roster, just given kind of the size that they have this year, even compared to years past. But I just think the top end talent's better. I think you might even argue that the depth's a little bit better, but obviously both of these teams are a little incomplete without their best player.
So I'll give you my rankings right now. You don't have to give me yours specifically, but I do want a ballpark from you of where you see the Celtics finishing here, because the top of the East is a little tough for me because I love Orlando, but I have to see it to actually think that they could be at the top of the conference.
And plus they have just guys that miss a ton of time every season.
Yeah, New York tentatively has been my favorite at the top of the conference, but I want to learn a little bit more about what they're going to be doing here and lineups and rotations and all of that before I lock in on that. Mike Brown, I like, but I don't love. So I tentatively have them number 1. Cleveland, I have number 2, and I might even be a little lower on them, and we can get into that in a little bit.
Yeah, that's
Orlando 3. I have Atlanta or Detroit in some order, 4 or 5. And
that's
then
what I have
6,
as well.
6, I did have the Heat, but I think I'm actually going to drop them down and put Milwaukee up there tentatively. But that could be Boston, as I said. That could be Indiana. That could be, if you even want to put Toronto and Chicago in that conversation, who I probably have outside the playoffs in the East at the moment. They're at least
Chicago
a threat
for
right
me.
there.
Toronto, if they stay healthy and everything breaks right, I can see it. But Miami, I can't really see. Especially with Tyler Hero missing time to start the season. Like they needed Hero to be so good last year for the entire season just to sneak in, and they were the 10 seed last year, right? and they found a way into the playoffs. Obviously, they were a lot better after the All-Star break, but I don't think that's a roster that got a whole lot better. I think Norm Powell's going to help them, but it's I think the ceiling's probably about an 8 seed for them.
Yeah, especially, I mean, they have like 4 other guys who are banged up now too, and looks like they might even be trying to figure out how to move on from Rozier here before this year even starts. So I don't love what I'm seeing out of their camp. Did he?
Got hurt in preseason, rolled his ankle.
So that's another, I mean, knock on wood here for the Celtics. They've been able to stay relatively healthy through camp, with the obvious one big exception to that here. McConnell down in Indiana, and the Cavs have some injuries in camp here as well as the year gets started. Philly, their guys still haven't recovered from their off-season surgeries. So, that is another advantage that the Celtics have in the mix here. So I'd say I'm 7-ish on them. If they're 6, I wouldn't be surprised. If they're 8, I wouldn't be surprised. 9, 10, 11, I'd be a little more surprised on the low end for them. That's where I think injuries would have to come into play for them to drop that far out of the playoffs. But where are you at on Boston's finishing position?
6, 7, 8. Like I think that's where it's going to be. I would prefer 6 or 7 because I do think that the Cavs are going to be the 1 seed again this year. I don't want to play Boston in the first round, particularly, if Tatum does kind of make one of those kind of later season returns. I don't expect him to be himself, obviously, coming off the Achilles, but it gives them just a little bit more. So I think that's 6, 7, or 8 range, depending on how they approach the season, right? Like, do they stay healthy? Do they look to flip Simons again for something that's going to pay off next year more so than this year? I I think they're too talented to tank for a high pick or anything like that. But I see them in that range.
Yeah, and Pellin put out the win projections. I think he had them at like 45-ish, with the caveat that they could move off of Simons and get
Yeah.
some tax relief there, something to that effect. And that would put them at 6 a year ago if you're going off the win totals from last year's East. So I
Elton
could see
only
it.
had 150 win team in the East too, so those projections, I wouldn't put too much stock in them.
They're a little squeezed, yeah, as he even mentioned there. So we'll see how this is going to stack up here. I want to get into Cleveland in a minute, but I do have a question for you that we've tossed around in the DMs a little bit about the Celtics this upcoming season here. But first, I want to give a shout out to Prize Picks. Go check out Prize Picks this week as basketball gets going just about a week from now. But until then, it's all about football over on Prize Picks, and we all play fantasy. We all have the injuries pop up or bad selections or whatever it might be that ruin your season-long fantasy team. So every week, I go over to Prize Picks and make some decisions about who I want on my team, who I like to score more than one touchdown. In this case, Saquon Barkley is always a popular choice for me, and Josh Allen more than 270 passing yards. That's another direction you could go there. I like what Drake May's doing this year, whether it's touchdowns or yards. And of course, they got all the great sports that are going on right now. It's baseball going into the late stages of their season. Hockey's back as well. And Prize Picks has it all over there. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats. And if you get your picks right, you could cash in. Get action on football in more than 40 states. And it's the only app that offers stacks, meaning you could pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. So you want to pick more on Josh Allen's pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns. Now you can pick them all in the same lineup only on Prize Picks. Follow other Prize Pick players directly in the app and copy their lineups in one click, whether it's a friend, celebrity partner, or someone whose picks you like. Hit the follow button and check out every lineup they create in the new feed tab on Prize Picks. They also invented the Flex Play, where you can get paid even if one of your pick misses. And injury reboots. That's the big one for me. If one of your players leaves the game in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks won't count it as a loss. So go over there this football season, what players are going off, which are overhyped. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your takes into cash all season long on Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. So we have a special guest here in Justin Rowan today, who, fortunately for us, had the experience of tearing his Achilles and going through the recovery. So you're seeing Tatum dunking. You're seeing him back out there running around. It's been 5 months since the surgery, new technology. You got the speed bridge and all kinds of other stuff that they've started to do here for this thing, and players seemingly coming back earlier than ever. Do you think we'll see Tatum this season?
I kind of hope for his sake we don't. Like what I've seen, the clips of him, jogging, taking shots, kind of doing the sidestep and stuff. It still looks like, that foot's just a little heavy. Like he's dragging it a little bit. I don't, at this point, like that Achilles is probably strong as hell. Like that's not a concern for me at all. It's just, when you rupture your Achilles, the biggest thing is getting the strength back. So, getting that calf strength to the point where it's even to the other leg. And then it's also the time to that maximum strength, right? Like those are kind of the key metrics that they're looking for. And I'm sure Boston's going to handle this incredibly well. I think the timing of getting that surgery done so quickly and reconnecting the blood flow within the tendon, that's going to be super beneficial. So if they rule it, that it's he's completed the rehab, the explosiveness is there, and all that sort of thing, I would trust it to be true. But you just always worry about the overcompensation, right? Of how your body's reacting to the torn Achilles. There's instances where people can still do a calf raise with the ruptured Achilles just because those side tendons, like that FHL tendon and all that are doing the primary work. So obviously from his standpoint, I'm thrilled to see him making progress. It seems like, when you look at the kind of timelines, this is when you should be jogging. This is when you should be doing that kind of stuff. But it's about getting the strength to even where you're not going to have kind of those overcompensating injuries, because your body is always going to cheat. It's always going to try to make up for that. And, as someone on the outside, I would say the best thing is to trust the doctor. So if they clear him and he's ready to go in March or April, about a year out, that would be a terrific story. I think he's one of the most talented players in the NBA, someone that you would expect to be, one of the faces of the next generation in the NBA. And I don't want that type of player, or any player really, to have their career changed or justify, or, changed in any significant way.
Yeah, and that's the gift and the curse with him in this situation is, he wants to get out there as quickly as possible. And he keeps stressing that I'm not going to do it any sooner than they say, 100%. That's the only time I'll be out there, all of that. But you can just tell, I mean, the way he's putting himself out there, the way he's just reminding everybody, this press tour he went on was unlike anything I've seen from him, just touting his desire to come back this year. And then, of course, you had the Shams report this week as well that he's informed the organization that he wants to play this year. So he's pushing. And you just hope
the
that he
timing
doesn't
matters.
push too hard.
I think how quickly he had the surgery was really important. Like for me, I also had, that complete rupture, but I didn't go.
How long did it take you? You didn't even have surgery.
Yeah, so I didn't have surgery. The person that did my knee surgery was, fortunately for me, that they were available to quickly look at it, and I'd say within 4 or 5 hours I was in the boot with the heel wedges. So it's the non-operative route. And, with the surgery, they're going to shorten that tendon and try to give it a chance to regain some of that same burst. But because I was in the wedges within 4 or 5 hours from a recovery standpoint, and that blood flow started to reestablish, and within 2-3 days I was feeling the tendon and the nerves reconnecting and all that kind of stuff. I think I had a better than typical outcome, from a range of motion standpoint and that sort of thing. And I attribute a lot of that to, hey, I wasn't waiting a couple of days for, a first, second opinion, and then eventually deciding to go operative or non-operative. Went right into the treatment, and I think that did have an impact. So I would expect that to be even more so the case when you consider not only how quickly they did the speed bridge surgery, but just having that speed bridge that's already starting to show better than typical outcomes. So I think to some extent we're in uncharted territory. So I don't want to sit here literally armchair GMing what is right and wrong for his recovery.
Yeah, for a lot of reasons. And Noah and I have had this discussion over, the last couple of days here too, is like, I think it's Jackson there in Indiana, and Wiseman and Drew Smith in Miami too. Like, these guys are coming back into this training camp ready to go and playing in the preseason game. So how much earlier could they have even been in action if games were actually happening, a month ago there? So they've been on the early side. Some of the guys starting to come back already. And of course, Lillard, Halliburton, timing wise, it makes sense. Those guys ruled themselves out, even in Lillard's case, being a little further in his career. For Tatum, he's younger. The surgery timing, as you mentioned, Noah did some great reporting on. And then, some of these new techniques here. It is uncharted territory. And I think that's what his doctor said, too, in one of the quotes he gave there. So that's why this is so intriguing, because we know what this normally looks like. Pretty much a year to get back to where he was. What were like the milestones timing wise for you? You said you were running around like 5 months, right?
Yeah, so I tore it mid-February. In September, like mid-September, I was went to Morocco and did like a big Sahara Desert like trek and stuff like that, camping out there. So walking, sorry, I don't have the conversion to miles because I'm Canadian here, but there's some 15-kilometer days pretty repeatedly over that whole trip. So at that point, I was already kind of jogging and doing that sort of stuff. Usually, even going the non-operative route. It did take me longer. Obviously, I wasn't training every day the same way, but basically, at the 12-month mark, they tell you can do everything, right? Like, I'm doing box jumps, I'm doing the explosive activities. You're trying to regain that. takes about the full 18 months to fully get that calf back to even. So that was just this past August that I at least with the athletic testing and measurement, that it was even.
Now you're back at it.
Back at it. Well, I'm not playing basketball again because the upside's just not there. But it's the rehab and all that. It helped my golf game, so that's terrific.
Speaking of that, we have the Celtics media game tomorrow. So if anyone's curious to see the highlights of that, I do think we might have some video coming out of there. That's the first one that's happened in a while.
Y'all better be stretching.
Absolutely. I'm wondering if Scalabrini's going to do it. I want to line up with
That'd
him
be funny.
potentially there. Let's talk some Cavs before we get you out of here. And of course, Justin hosts the Chase Down podcast with Carter Rodriguez and good friends of the show. So I'll tell you why I'm a little lower on the Cavs this year. And I've liked this team.
I'm interested because I always like your perspective on this stuff.
Right. And I've been high on that team for a while now. I've liked them. I've loved what they've done with the roster. Mobley, I'm super optimistic about where he's going now. But it's always ominous to me twofold. One, when a team starts the year with, Garland's not going to be ready, probably going to miss the start of the season with the surgery there. I never love that health-wise to begin a year. You miss all the training camps, so you don't get that ramp-up process. That's tough for one of the core pieces of the team.
I will say Garland's been taking part in training camp. He said at media day he's been doing full contact practice for about a month, a little over a month actually. So the timeline was that he was going to be able to practice with the team in training camp. He has been doing that, not full contact every single day, but he has been doing stuff with the team. I think they're taking a very conservative approach, but there's a lot of optimism there. There hasn't been any setbacks, and I kind of expect to see him within the first 10 games here.
Okay, first 10 games for him. So that's good in terms of the time he'll miss. Strus, it's going to be more like a month plus, right?
Strus, I don't expect to see him in 2025. I think he's going to miss a considerable amount of time here with that Jones fracture. Again, I think they're going to be very conservative with that. But I think it's going to be similar to last year where Strus didn't play last season until pretty much after Christmas. So I think we're looking at about the same timeline.
And that's tough. It took a while to get going last year after that injury. Yeah. So that's a key guy on that roster. You still got Hunter. Love him being back. Dean Wade's good. We both love him.
Hunter has been the summer MVP, according to Kenny Atkinson. He said he's been their best player in camp. And last year, Kenny was saying that about Ty Jerome. So, this is like a torch that's being passed where, if Hunter can be that guy, that'll be a lot of fun. But it does sound like even if Strus were healthy, the change was going to be made for DeAndre to start. And that's something that we've been really excited about and wanted to see even last year.
That's a good thing. He got into that sweet spot last year of playing lower minutes and being efficient in those minutes. So we'll see if the ramp up in minutes and role here works for him, especially for a guy who's had injuries himself throughout his career. So that's another question there, whether that's going to work. Don't love the injuries. And this one's big for me. And this is just kind of a feel thing for me is you have this team. They've been in the playoffs a couple times now. They've fallen short a couple times of that conference finals. And so, does the belief erode here at all after another tough playoff loss? Because that was a tough playoff loss. I know they were beat up. I know it's injuries. They've dealt with a lot of that over the last couple of years here.
Yeah.
But in the year 3 of this Mitchell thing, this core here, does it start to break down a little bit at all? Or if there's a slow start, do guys start going in different directions there? Because they were so great last year. And I feel like we've seen a lot of teams have that amazing regular season and then not have it translate to the playoffs. And then the next year, it's like, can you actually get that back? Because it's going to be tough to top what they did last regular season. That was one of those years where it was just all in, new coach bump, new system gets everybody playing at their best. And now you're starting a year with a couple guys missing, and in Ty Jerome's case, a guy leaving entirely. So I think they drop off a little bit this year. I think it'll be the Knicks getting that, new coach bump, trying to perfect their roster there. Orlando's coming. I'm super excited about what they're going to do this year with the Desmond Bane edition and all that. I mean, they already showed that they were ready for this thing with the way they fought the Celtics round one, I thought. And then, you get some wild card contenders like Atlanta, who I like their offseason, and Detroit as well, who did lose Beasley and, maybe doesn't repeat totally what they did last year, but feels like they're on the ascent too. So where are you at on the your Cavs?
Yeah, I think regular season, they're definitely going to take a step back. I think if you look at last year from an impact standpoint, the two most impactful players over that regular season were Darius Garland and Evan Mobley. Like, it was a dramatic difference with Garland on and off the court offensively. It's a dramatic difference on and off the court for Evan Mobley. And Donovan took, a little bit of a step back. So I kind of have them around 58 wins is kind of what I have in mind, coming down from that 64.
Is that second, third-ish?
I have them first still. I don't think the Knicks are going to take that big of a step forward in the regular season. Like, I don't think Mike Brown's going to play the guys 38, 40 minutes per game. And even if they're better equipped for the playoffs and maybe a little bit more balanced, that's going to result in fewer regular season wins, because the Knicks were incredibly healthy last year with their starters playing every minute of every single game. I like some of their additions, but Jordan Clarkson hasn't, been an impactful, helpful player in a winning situation in a very,
I like Yabu,
very long
though.
time. I like Yabu too, but again, to put Yabu on the court, you're taking somebody off the court that was playing, almost every minute of every single game the prior season, right? So, and they also got very lucky from an injury standpoint last year for a lot of guys that do miss time. So, I still think that the Cavs are going to finish ahead of the Knicks. I can see the Knicks finishing ahead, so I'm not going to take offense to that. But I think from a talent standpoint, I think this is the best Cavs roster since 2017. I think that this is absolutely a team that's built to win a championship. Injuries are probably my biggest concern. We need to see this team get healthy throughout a postseason. I do think, when you're talking about kind of the vibes and stuff like that of is there still the belief? This was a team that had an edge at media day. Like, you could tell that every single player was at a new level of focus. Donovan was talking about how. Yeah, go ahead.
The interesting thing for me was the Okoro-Ball swap, and I know Atkinson was really excited about that. That one, to me, from what you're talking about there, like just shaking things up a little bit, edge, the mix, all that sort of stuff. Because I liked Okoro, but I do understand, especially with Garland being out to start the year, want to have a connective piece like Ball, a guy who has experience, who at his best could thrive in the role that he plays on this team. But I just wonder where he's at health-wise and effectiveness-wise at this point in his career. After what I thought was a pretty lackluster season in Chicago, obviously coming back from just the most enormous injury you can think of. But that was an interesting gamble to me because it could pay off big time. It could change the mix, the dynamic in there, his
honestly,
attitude.
I think there's a really direct comparison, and that's OKC trading Josh Giddey, a former top 10 pick, just like the Cavs traded Okoro, the former top 10 pick, that neither team kind of had the room to continue developing for a often injured guard that they're hoping has, an impact off the bench, right? So I think that's what they're hoping for there. I don't know what you can count on for Lonzo. I think even with Garland out, he's going to be playing primarily off ball. That's where he's most comfortable. He's going to be kind of that connective guy. And I think the hope is he's not the same level of point of attack defender as Okoro. Like, Lonzo's thing is he's a better off-ball defender. He creates chaos with steals and stuff like that. And that's one of the real points of emphasis for the Cavs this year is last year they played back, right? We're going to maintain the integrity of our shell. We're not going to generate a lot of turnovers. We're not going to create chaos on the outside. This year it's different, right? Like, they've got guys that are going to create that chaos, right? Like, Lonzo's definitely one of those guys. Jalen Tyson plays that way. Larry Nance Jr. coming in, kind of that perfect third big that they've been waiting for, that can be an offensive hub and generate steals, generate blocks, all that sort of thing. They're more equipped to play that kind of style defensively and make teams uncomfortable. So I'm excited to see that, but Even if the Lonzo thing doesn't work out, I don't think they're counting on it necessarily. They're hopeful and they're going to manage his minutes, but I think they have the depth that even if he's not in the lineup, we're all right. We're just going to continue when we're fully healthy, playing a little more Sam Merrill or something along those lines. But at media day, like you really heard from everybody, like, hey, this was an off season of, getting into, as much as it's a cliche, like the best shape of my life, right? Like Donovan Mitchell's like, I'm in my February conditioning already. Like it's Darius, you could tell he added, I think, 12 pounds of muscle. He looks a lot bigger. Mobley looks a whole lot bigger. DeAndre Hunter, Jarrett Allen looks bigger. Like up and down the lineup, Jalen Tyson lost some weight, but he looks fantastic. Like up and down the roster, I think there's a real edge there. And I think compared to other situations where a team's been together a while and they came up short, what happened to them in the postseason, I don't think shook their belief in what they're doing, right? Like Darius Garland, turf toe, that ligament severed and needed to have surgery, and he's not even ready for the start of the year. Donovan Mitchell, calf strain. DeAndre Hunter fractures his shooting head. Mobley misses a game against Indiana that came right down to the wire too, right? Like
that one was tough.
It was up and down the roster.
That was the most they were hurt in that series with guys out, but they were they had the game won, and
they had the game won, and then you get the apology after, like, hey, sorry, 7 points worth of plays came from lane violations on the free throw, where Siakam still has the ball in his hand shooting a free throw, and Nesmith is on his hip already at the free throw line, and they blow that call. So if any of those calls go properly, that series is 1-1. But even if that series, even if the Cavs somehow found a way through the injuries to win that series, Donovan's not playing the next round. Darius isn't playing the next round. Like you could tell in game 5, they didn't have anything physically left. So I think that probably, saved some of the questioning and self-doubt. And I think the biggest thing is looking at preseason, looking at how Evan Mobley looks. I don't know if he's going to do it. Just like last year, I thought it was the first year the Cavs could win a title, but it's about if they have the maturity, the consistency, all those sort of things. I think this is the first year Mobley can take that step forward and be the best player on the team. Like I think,
and that's everything. Yeah, that's where you start talking about championship with them if he gets to that level.
The body is where it needs to be finally. He's going to turn 25 mid-season before playoffs. Like this is when you start getting into that physical prime. The offensive skill set, I think, is there now. Last year was such a big step forward from a self-creation standpoint, from a three-point shooting standpoint. I think that Mobley is ready to take that step. And even if he comes, close, because obviously Donovan Mitchell sets a high bar, even if he comes close, I think that's the kind of thing that might be enough.
Definitely. And like I've said, I think he has to get to that point for this team to get to where they want to go here. But this is it, right? Celtics are down. Pacers are down. A lot of teams around the East dealing with injuries right now, and it's just this wide open conference. There's no reason on paper that they shouldn't be considered the favorites here and expect to advance to the finals. This is that kind of season for them, and to some degree, they're fortunate that the core's persisted long enough to get to this opportunity here, because Celtics championship team ends up in their way 2 years ago. Injuries pop up. Last year, injuries pop up. That is something I'll say, though, is that starts to happen every single year here. Do you expect to be healthy?
It's a trend. Like if it happens again this offseason, I think you have to ask serious questions of, hey, do we just reboot and build around Mobley, solely, right? Like this is 3 years in a row that Donovan's been dealing with an injury in the playoffs. This is 2 years in a row for Darius. Like it's you have to wonder about the durability and ability to stay healthy in a playoff run.
And this is where the Celtics could actually start to bump up the East a little bit. The more teams that are hurt in front of them, the healthier they stay, the more opportunity there is for them to rise. But it's not inconceivable if Cleveland has a bad injury season that the Celtics could finish ahead of them. It's unlikely.
Yeah.
But there's a world where it could happen.
We've seen crazier things happen, right? Like there's always things that we don't see coming in the offseason that come to fruition in the year.
Yeah, and that's where the East is. Like, I'm going to make my prediction here. I'm sure you will down the line. This thing's totally I had Michael Pina come on here and say Celtics could finish 12th. Like, that's where he's at on them. And I'm like, it's not out of the realm of possibility. The Magic could finish first. He even has the Magic winning the East, which I could totally see. There's a lot of different things that could happen here, and that's going to make it fun. This is the parity era we're in. I think it's particularly the case in the East where you don't have the Thunder just rolling things at the moment. So I'm excited for this year. I'm actually excited about the Celtics too. I know a lot of people aren't, but that element of doubt, like any given night, are you going to win? Are you going to lose? That's going to be there almost every single game for them. And I think everybody going into this season in the East looks at it and says, maybe outside of like the Nets and, the Wizards, this could go any number of ways this year. And that's going to be awesome. So it all gets started just about a week from Wednesday. Who do the Cavs have in their opener?
Next, Madison Square Garden. Let's go.
Nice. Is that Tuesday on the opening night, or is that on the Wednesday?
22nd. Yeah, it's Wednesday. There's no East teams playing on opening night.
Of course. And he's going to have the whole season covered per usual. How many years you guys been doing the Chase Down now?
This is season 9. This is our 9th season covering the Cavs. So that's pretty fun.
Awesome. Give them a subscribe over there. They're the official Cleveland Cavaliers podcast over on their YouTube channel. So check that out. Of course, subscribe to ours. We were at practice today, another practice tomorrow, and we got the media game as well, which I'm more than ready to compete in. A couple Celtics assistant coaches actually going to be leading the two teams there. I won't spill the beans on who they are yet, but some notable assistants taking part in this thing. Unfortunately, it's not Joe Mazzulla.
I want to see some highlights, buddy.
I think we might have some. So stay tuned for that as well. That'll be over on the Celtics All Access channel here. Patriots coverage continues this week. Good win against New Orleans. Subscribe to Patriots Press Pass, as well as the Bruins Rinkside channel for all their coverage, and WNBA Today with Noah as the offseason begins over on that side. So for Justin Rowan, I'm Bobby Manning. This has been the Garden Report here on a Monday. We will talk to you again tomorrow from practice. Peace.
No one's sneaking a vegan brownie by me, I'll tell you that.
Okay, you know what, John? We're going to do it.
You have to feel that way too, Bobby.
I have to feel that way. Let's
Yeah.
slide Al over and make Luke your first center.
Bobby, we gave you Luke hour early. We're not going to end this on a damn conversation about Luke